And also, there's also residual value loss in cause of bird flu. The time such disease is reported, the trauma is causing the farmer, the loss is causing as a result of non-income coming again, the loss as a result of not people that he cannot meet his needs any longer. It is enormous economically. And also it's affecting the economy because the number of people being employed by that farm will be out of job. And we're talking about job creation. And poultry farming is another aspect of agriculture that can create a lot of jobs for Nigerians.
Well, that background report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me first introduce our guest to you. I'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Egejuru Eze, who is the Chief Veterinary Officer, also Director, Department of Veterinary and Pest Control Services of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
We also have here tonight Dr. Godwin Oyedele Oyediji, who is Registrar, CEO of Nigerian Institute of Animal Science. Thanks for joining us here.
Good evening.
Let's also welcome Dr. Tony Joannis, who's Head Regional Laboratory for Avian Influenza and Other Transboundary Animal Diseases of the National Veterinary Research Institute. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
We also like to welcome Dr. Edgar Amos Sunday, National President, Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association. Thanks. We start off by asking Dr. Egejuru Eze to tell us what's the current state of bird flu right now in the country.
Yes, bird flu resurgence came into the country in January 2015. Around November 2015, it went down. For about 8 weeks, we didn't have any report of outbreaks. By January 2016, we had a resurgence, which we believe is still a continuation of the outbreak since January 2015. Right now, about 23 states and FCT have been affected by the disease, and 97 local government areas also affected. Like the reports that brief you gave, more than 2 million birds have been depopulated because of this avian influenza. And the federal government has paid more than 700 million naira compensation to affected farmers, but most of them have not been paid yet.
Now, quickly, what do you think is responsible for this resurgence?
We have not been able to do some of the containment activities. One of these is active surveillance, where we will search for the virus and be ahead of the virus. And that's on the government part, but on the farmers' part, most of them, alas, they don't have proper biosecurity measures put in place in their poultry farms.
Okay, we'll explore all that, but let's come to Dr. Godwin Oyedele Oyediji, the Registrar CEO of Nigerian Institute of Animal Science. Let's give us your perspective on the resurgence of bird flu.
Well, I see it as a challenge, but we thank God that Nigeria is never, never, never afraid of such challenges. This is not the first time. In fact, we take the world in handling serious disease outbreaks in terms of control and management. You saw what happened during the Ebola virus. This avian flu came in before, 2005, 2006. It was stamped out. And this current outbreak will suffer a similar fate. Now, looking at the risk factors, because that is where the animal scientist is concerned, what are the major ones from our own surveillance, active and passive? We have discovered that generally, once we get over a problem, most farmers are likely to go to sleep and forget and abandon a few other things that they are supposed to be doing. There is the minimum operating standards and procedures established, published by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture through the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science, what a farmer is supposed to do. And it was passed to the Poultry Farmers Association, and it was adopted, and it was put in place. But along the line, maybe something happened. And of course, you know that we have various tiers of poultry operation. You have the village level, which we are addressing.
All right, so many of these issues have been thrown up with this resurgence of avian flu, but that's the real worry. Yes, it came in at one time, we stamped it out, and it has come back. The feeling is that this will keep on, it will be a recurring cycle. But let's hear from the head Regional Laboratory for Avian Influenza and other transboundary animal diseases, because that's important here. We hear people say these things, can cross the borders.
Yes, Cyril. I'm sure you recall in 2006 when we had the outbreak, we were inexperienced. We're the first country on the continent of Africa that had the disease. And between 2006 and 2008, we did a wonderful job. We, in fact, were considered 1 out of 3 countries, Egypt and Indonesia, where the disease was expected to be endemic. And I'll say, as a Nigerian, I feel very proud, and that's the template, I'm sure, even the Ebola disease that came into the country. The success story was built on the template that was used during the avian influenza outbreak. We did a wonderful job, and there was a template for the control of the containment and the control of that disease in this country, which worked pretty well. And at the end of the day, Nigeria was proven to be one of those countries that did a wonderful job. And I recall that Egypt was asked to come to Nigeria and figure out, when they had their problem, how did Nigeria do it. This time around, it has come into the country, and I think that we had built an experience from a previous outbreak, and what was required was for us to not reinvent the wheel, but just get to do what we did that time and probably polish a few things, and would have been through with this disease within a very short period of time. But for as long as wild birds that are reservoirs of the disease exist on the surface of the earth, and we can't shoot them off the air because they are part of the ecosystem, we will continue to have avian influenza outbreaks, not just in Nigeria, but all around the world. So the thing is that, what should we do to prepare for it? The US, the best of where the services are, biosecurity and whatever thing you can think of available, they still have outbreaks. But what is important is that you prepare for when there is going to be an introduction of the virus by these wild birds, and contain the disease in the primary area where there has been an introduction, so it does not spread beyond that.
Right. Is there any particular season of the year, period of the year, that this is not susceptible?
Oh, yes. The wild birds usually migrate when it is winter in Europe and the other parts of where the cold climates are, and they're coming over to Africa for the wintering. So we do expect, and usually it happens that towards the end of the year, when that's winter in their own place, and for us it's a lot warmer, and they're migrating to our own part of the continent where they're nesting, they're going to breed, and they are likely to be, and they are usually the primary source of introduction to our domestic poultry. So what should we do? We should be prepared then to
from 2006 to 2008, there was a kind of an agreement that the country will be carrying out surveillance on a regular basis, not to wait until there is an outbreak before you get to know what is going on. We didn't do that. We stopped doing it. And even when this one came, instead of looking at the whole country holistically, doing both passive and active surveillance, so that we now have a national picture of what the situation is like. We wait, there is an outbreak in Ebonyi, we add it. Another outbreak in Adamawa, we add it. We are trailing the virus instead of going ahead of it, taking samples to ascertain what we need to do. Again, you also have a lot of other things. Our borders are porous, And so either by legitimate trade or smuggling or other practices, the virus can come in. People can import or smuggle products left, right, and center. You also have weak and ineffective veterinary infrastructure. And, I mean, even if you look at the personnel are inadequate. You talk about a country of 180 million, you have maybe 5,000, 6,000 practicing veterinary doctors, compared to Turkey that has half Nigeria's population. They have 22 veterinary doctors. I mean, that is even grossly, but perhaps the largest hub of veterinary, poultry practice is Oyo State, or the southwest axis. Oyo State has 33 local governments, but has 15 veterinary doctors on its payroll, 6 in the headquarters. You have less than 10 who should be on the field manning 33 local governments. You have Oliole Market and
sellers of fowl sellers are all members of the Poultry Association.
Yes, maybe we can, yeah.
So it's not only poultry farmers, it's Poultry Association, covering the poultry value chain. This is a big concern to us. In 2006, when this outbreak started, we were very, very strongly challenged by it. But the Minister of Agriculture immediately swung into action, and quite commendably were able to control this. Some mention has been made of the fact that farmers do not follow strict biosecurity. To a certain extent, this is true, but then in countries where very strict biosecurity measures are done, from the United States to Mexico, Canada, Australia, France, Germany, Italy, Egypt, Ghana, all of these countries have come down with this avian influenza outbreak. So the major challenge is not only biosecurity. We have to stop the disease from ravaging our industry. And active surveillance, I think, is the key. We need to significantly step up the surveillance of the disease. We need to look for the disease and not allow it to follow us. And I think the Ministry of Agriculture needs to be prepared to invest in surveillance. It's always very painful for me to see the budgets of Nigeria and the amount of money that is released for agriculture after a 10% Maputo declaration of amount for agriculture on the budget. So we need to get very serious about this. Agriculture, I think we have agreed its importance in this economy. But we need to have men that go for instance, depopulation, do not have boots, they don't have overalls, they don't have vehicles. This is for depopulation. So active surveillance, is very challenging for them. This is the reality we see on the field. I am hoping that this will be addressed by the Honorable Minister we have now. We also need to ensure that farmers get compensated, because who is your typical poultry farmer in this country? Is a woman or a man who has a pension and invests all of that
chain that has to do with poultry. But again, let me put this to you. What about the numerous, I might say, millions of households across Nigeria, rural Nigeria, even urban centers, all those households that have chickens in the backyard? How do they relate with the Poultry Association of Nigeria, and how do you deal with risk factors in a situation like this?
Well, their relationship is an interesting one. Everybody has a mother or a grandmother who has chicken in, the village. We're not able to bring all of them into the association. A lot of those birds are very resilient and will be able to resist anything. So they are not part of the association per se. But you see that gradually more and more farms are becoming commercial oriented. You know, children who come out of farms that have farms in their backyard are starting commercial farms with a passion because they have a bit of an idea. So this is how we're starting to relate with the whole of the poultry population.
All right. Okay, thank you. Dr. Eze, it's been said here that there are so many things that we stopped doing and we didn't do, and as long as we continue in this way, we'll continue to see, you know, this recurrence of things like avian influenza. And it's not just enough to say that we now have the experience. In 2006, we didn't have the experience, but we gathered that experience between 2006 and 2008, and then we went to sleep. Why is that?
Really, we didn't go to sleep, if I would say, because we had a structure in place. We have a surveillance network in place. But what happened was that the funding, you know, dried up. So the thing became
Made some support to Nigeria last year.
Yes, but beyond the support, because the question is, are we going to be dependent on support? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Okay. I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, the truth is that it's primarily a problem of this country. Between 2006 and 2008, yes, we had a World Bank project that funded both the agriculture, human health, and communication components. But primarily, it's a problem of the country. And so the country should see it as far as I'm concerned, public good to contain this disease. And then we can get the support from outside. Support from development partners and from the World Bank is not sustainable because the guys who are losing these birds are primarily Nigerians. So the government must be seen to be in the fore of leading it, because questions will be asked. How much of an interest does the government have? At the end of the project in 2000 and I can't remember, 2009 or so, it was said that government should make a commitment of about $100 million, $1 million per annum to sustain the structures that have been put on ground by the World Bank, so that we can be ahead of the virus. The whole idea is that when you have an early introduction, it's cheaper for you when it is introduced to hold down the disease. So you're looking for the virus, and that's why they keep talking about surveillance. Surveillance is about going to search, whether passively or actively, that when the wild birds that usually introduce the virus into a country first, introduction is usually more or less, it happens all over the world, by wild birds. When they introduce the virus into a primary area, that you can detect it early and hold the disease in that area, is the cheapest form of it. So if you don't have a sustainable surveillance program, you will always have avian influenza. We can do away with the 2015-2016 outbreak, put all the resources and clear it. That's not the end of the story. It is going to come back. It's not a question. Whether you like it or not, it's going to come back.
Okay.
I think the question of funding has to do with our priorities.
Okay.
We are simply not giving it the priority it deserves.
All right. I'll come to you on that, but Aminu is calling in from Kanu. Aminu, let's hear you. Aminu from Kanu. All right. What's the gap at the National Veterinary Institute?
Well, the gap, we basically have mandates. Our mandates are, one, research into diseases of livestock that are of that's a priority to the country, and developing control policies, vaccine production.
Okay, right, like avian influenza.
Yeah, and then diagnostic services.
So how well have we done with bird flu?
Excellent. In fact, the component parts of the control and the containment of bird flu, one contingent is that you get samples, you analyze the samples as fast as possible, and send back the results to enable action to be taken on the field to control the disease. And that I can tell you that NVRI, despite all the budgetary problems that we have, has done excellently well. We take samples and when we get samples, 2 hours after the samples have arrived at the lab, we can give you back a result. And the maximum is 24 hours. And I say this because even in the reference laboratory, OIE FAO reference laboratory in Italy, they are not doing better than what we're doing around the place. So NVRI, in that respect, has performed excellently well as a component part of the containment and the control of avian influenza.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones now. Sani is calling in from Katsina. Hello, Sani.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sani, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen, for this great conversation today. All right. What I want to just talk about tonight is the issue of this compensation. I wonder what is happening in our country. Some people, they have problems, and they forward that problem to the government. And the government will now say, all right, let us pay compensation to you, especially with regard to this issue, especially such people that have this kind of disaster. You invest your own money into something. At the end, this kind of, problem arise. So the worst thing is, why will there be a delay? Why will there be a delay in your payment? Is it that the government is not serious in paying you, or they don't care about what is happening, or is there some people that are dedicated there to fight for you, to bring you your money? Sometimes when you go there, asking for your money, some people will now tell you, all right, what will you pay us so that we can make it very quick for you, or something like that. This is corruption. We need to tackle this as soon as possible, because what is happening in this country, to the extent that somebody who is now demanding for his compensation will...
All your birds are slaughtered. Now, imagine you have a factory, or imagine you have a shop, and everything goes. It's really a very tough situation. And what is being paid as compensation is not really a compensation. It's something to just reduce the burden of the loss. Because the amount of money that the farmer actually loses, a bird that has a commercial value of 5,000 naira or so, he's given 750 naira. It reduces his burden, but it does not compensate him per se. But we've accepted it with the spirit. Initially, the farmers were being given 1,450 before it was reduced to 750. So the point is that the issue of compensation is a global phenomenon. Nigeria is not unique in compensations. In fact, you'll be shocked to hear some of the things that other countries actually do to support their farmers. It's really quite amazing. Some governments, I would not mention names here, gave 1.4 billion US dollars to their farmers to help reduce the burden of the losses on avian flu.
All right.
Another country gives its farmers some kind of advances to help them reduce the losses on the high price of raw materials. In Nigeria, the government has tried, but there is still so much that can be done. And poultry is such a low-hanging fruit for this country. We're the #1 producer of eggs in Africa. We're the #4, #5 producer of chicken. But we can lead this continent in both chicken and eggs. But the government needs to be prepared to sit with those that are involved in the business and make real things happen. We're not talking about nice jingles that we hear.
Okay.
We're talking about real steps that can be taken to, for instance, we're borrowing money at double digits. There is no country in the world that I have visited where farmers borrow money at this rate. It just doesn't happen. I met a banker from Rabobank. He says that they're giving them loans as low as 2.5% for 15 years, for 20 years. Here you'd pay 26, 28% with...
The problem is not the government. It's the gentleman sitting down there. It's the gentleman sitting down there. It's all of you, I think, that is the problem. Anytime until a program comes up, before you talk to media and speak to people about it, if all of us do our job promptly, how many research have you put on from 2016 to 2006 to today? Since the last time. How many research have you done? How many times have you called media to speak to Nigerians? Then the gentleman from Lagos, what have you done about your union? How many people have you made them register under your union to know that, okay, at every time, this person have this number of beds, this person have number of birds. Every time we have a situation, that's when we come and speak, spend 10 hours on the screen.
All right. Okay, Lawal, the gentlemen are here, and a short while ago, we did hear Dr. Tony Juanis talk about the efforts that have been put in by the National Veterinary Research Institute. And I'm sure that he'll explain more as we go on. But first, I'd like to ask Dr. Eze, how do you compute the compensation? We've heard Chief Oduto say it's nothing really. He's talked about a bird that has a value of 5,000 naira, and the farmer gets compensated 700. It's it doesn't go. How do you compute this compensation?
It's wise to say now that the Minister of Agric constituted an interministerial committee on avian influenza to look into all aspects of containment, compensation, and surveillance and everything. So the committee came up with this, scaling of a payment, so that by then the disease was spreading like wildfire, so that government can be able to reach as many farmers as possible. Initially, when it started, the index cases, government paid 1,400 per bird.
To be given that opportunity of training the trainers for animal food safety, which consequently will dovetail into human food safety. They came in here sponsored on their own through the institute. And the documents we developed, because the target, the strategy is to make sure that the farmer on his own knows what he's supposed to do. We published an approved listing of commercial feed ingredients. That is to say, a list of ingredients which commercial feed millers are limited to use to make sure that the feed that is coming to animals are not contaminated. They come from wholesome sources, bagged, secured. So all these issues, we have been working very closely with the association, with other stakeholders, other agencies, Standard Organization of Nigeria, NAFDAC, the ministry, and so on and so forth, in publishing all these documents, making sure that at least the operating standards we wrote was non-existent before. So that, and you know that the world is a small place today. People coming from abroad who come to Nigeria, they eat. Even some come as inspectors. One time, some went to Okwaba tour, and then they went back to EU. They didn't know that they were EU inspectors, to write a lot of things about what they saw, that meat was not sanitary. So all these things, we cannot hide. The reason why we wrote those figures, those papers, for farmers, poultry farmers, to even hold, it was not a textbook or scientific document. Simple to read, to say, hey, look, at least there's a shred of evidence with me. See, there's the standard published for poultry operation, and I'm abiding by it. So this, we have been running advocacy programs and so on for the industry.
Okay. Ibrahim is calling in from Abuja here. Ibrahim, go ahead. Hello, Ibrahim.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ibrahim.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Ibrahim.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I concur with the person that called from Zaria. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I concur with the person that called from Kaduna. He's saying the truth. The people there, they understand our challenges. They know what the poultry farmers need. The biosecurity will be trained on our own. Just like as my national president has said, my national president. Yet, I've not seen him. And the farm is completely going down. What do we do? Sometimes, before we can say, in fact, I don't know, you need to help us out. You need to do things. You need to calm down. The PAN Association has been trying. PAN has tried. I commend their efforts, and the chairman and everybody.
All right.
They have tried on their own. They've tried the best. But we cannot withstand this. We know
Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
Nobody care about the farmers, especially the poultry association. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Well, you've raised a number of issues. We'll look at those issues, but for now, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll look at some of the issues that Ibrahim has raised. We'll also try to find out why we're not having that many veterinary doctors in Nigeria. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Together, no matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together. Let's stop fighting each other. Let us live as one. It doesn't matter where you come from, your tribe or religion, man, woman or child. It doesn't matter who you are. Put Nigeria first. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together. How can we develop when we're always in crisis? Families have become refugees in their country. No matter our differences, show some understanding. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our...
That not much collaboration was going on between agencies that should be major players in what we're talking about and the association. But I'd like to ask this. How much collaboration do you have with the Poultry Association, for instance, ever since we garnered that experience in dealing with bird flu?
Okay. You know, the containment and the control of avian influenza anywhere in the world is a multidisciplinary approach. So you can't do it, just one discipline can't do it around place. And I think that, like I said, we had a template in 2006 and 2008 that really worked for us. So we're not reinventing the wheel. But I just want to go back to what some of the comments that were made. It's government's responsibility. Primary introduction of avian influenza into any one country, most of the time, is by migratory birds. It's known. So it's the responsibility of government to ensure that they have an effective surveillance system to detect the virus when it comes into the country. Government, that's its responsibility. She may be shying away from it, but if she makes an investment, in the long term, it's a lot cheaper. Sustainable surveillance system. But when the virus gets into the country, because you have commercial poultry farmers, they have made investments, whether from bank or from personal resources. It is their responsibility to a great extent to ensure that the virus does not enter into their investment.
Okay.
Because they are the guys who are going to sustain the loss. They should. So compensation is a tool. One, to ensure that you report infection.
Now, I'm not cutting you short, but I raised this earlier. I will still go back to Chief Odunto to talk about this. And I said, it's possible. Some people have alleged that, yes, perhaps the outbreak of bird flu was underreported. Now, take a farmer, typical farmer who has maybe 2,000 birds, all right? And he notices that one or two are not looking right. And he
does not get into your farm. So because you have an investment, you want to be sure that, look, I need to protect these birds. So I need to do everything to prevent take all the necessary measures to prevent the virus from entering my farm. Knowing that even when I'm compensated, it's not total value. There's nowhere in the world where compensation is on the total value of the birds. It's never. Otherwise, you could just as well infect your farm, knowing that if I have 5,000, if you can pay me 5,000 naira, let me infect my farm. At the end of the day, you're going to pay me 5,000 naira. So it doesn't work. There's nowhere in the world where the template ensures that you get full value for the bird.
Okay, Dr. Sunday, let's introduce another bit into this now. And for many of us, we must have at one time or the other noticed that, and this is not just restricted to poultry, we do know that in so many parts of the country today, you have livestock. The moment they begin to show signs of being unwell, the next thing, they put a knife to it, and it's slaughtered, it's processed for consumption. That happens all the time. Even for those that have been ruled to be contaminated, we are that kind of a people, right? So what are the risks here? Because there are worries about the flu being transported to humans. What are the risks of consuming birds that are infected?
Tremendous. Let me start from saying that there are benefits for taking healthy animal products, meat, milk, eggs, and so on and so forth. There are advantages that they are healthy because the World Health Organization itself prescribes the intake of a minimum quantity of 65 grams of animal protein on a daily basis, especially for vulnerable groups like children and women. But a high percentage, hundreds of diseases that afflict us are from animals. We share the same environment. As a matter of fact, at an international conference recently, somebody defined health as an acronym for humans, environment, animals living together harmoniously. As long as we ignore health in our animals, we get sick. You ignore what happens in primates, you get Ebola. You ignore what happens with rats, you get Lassa fever. You ignore birds, you get avian influenza. You ignore dogs, you get rabies. You get tuberculosis from cows, you get brucellosis, you get a lot of diseases. Hundreds, literally hundreds of diseases that afflict human beings are from animals. So the risks are there, tremendous risks. And as we are talking about avian influenza too, perhaps the lackadaisical attitude of the relevant stakeholders is because no human being had died at the moment. Perhaps we are waiting for that to happen first, because the frenzy about Lassa fever has overtaken the avian influenza largely because human lives are involved. The potential for human lives to be lost in avian influenza is also there. Why don't we do the needful so that we prevent it? And bear this in mind, diseases that jump from animals to man, if you restrict it in animals or eradicate it in animals, you automatically prevent human beings from getting it. Or if you block the transmission at the animal-human interface, again, you make the human population healthy. So as we speak, controlling animal diseases invariably, instantly, inevitably makes the human population healthier. So the risks of making our poultry or allowing our poultry to get avian influenza to human health is quite enormous.
Chief Odunto, you've heard that, yes, it is the primary responsibility of, yes, the commercial investors in poultry to make sure that bird flu does not come in there. What's your response to that? And PAN, the Poultry Association, what has it been up to in ensuring that its members, at least the registered ones, are able to observe, you know, good practices as to prevent things like avian influenza infiltrating their investments?
Very much. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the immense contribution that all the people sitting on that panel have made to the survival of the poultry industry in Nigeria. Like I said, poultry is a low-hanging fruit, and it is potentially a $6 billion business, $6 billion business, rather, to this economy, employing millions of jobs. Now, with regards to what we have done as an association, we were the first to actually report the case that started in 2015. And I happened to be part of this, that chain at that time to report it. We did not know it was avian influenza for sure. But what we've done since then is serious advocacy. We have held series of seminars and conferences and workshops in every poultry producing part of this country to try and get farmers to embrace the disease to the populace. Also, with improved biosecurity, the farm hands that are coming in contact with birds are cleaning their hands, they're cleaning their environments, they're taking their baths before they leave the farms. So a lot of improvement has taken place, and I do not envisage any loss of lives to this disease.
All right.
I'll also want to add that the issue of compensation for losses should be taken very seriously, because that really, along with biosecurity, are the two most important success factors for this outbreak.
Some people have put.
Now, I wanted to
some people have put.
the point is that with a lot of the viruses, they are fragile, I agree. But it's not in the cooking. You slaughter it, you process it. And in these places, you could get infected. So it's not a question of that you are cooking it very well. No, you don't take the chicken cooked. It has to be slaughtered. It has to be, if it's processed. If it's a cow, it has to be flayed, and so on and so forth. It is in those processes that you get the infection. So we cannot lull ourselves about the fragility of the virus because we cook our food. Because before it becomes a meal, there are things we do that exposes us to getting infected.
Now, that of course would throw up the issue of safe practices in handling poultry. Yes.
Yes. The code that we wrote for poultry operations includes the safe processing of poultry meat. To slaughter, to dress, to package, freeze, and distribute. They are all they are all inside that code of practice. Minimum operating standards for poultry operations. But maybe at this point, it's just not the processing or packaging or whatever alone. There are other aspects. It's not the chicken alone. We are talking eggs are there. We've made a lot of advocacies concerning recycling of egg trays, because we are much more concerned with the spread.
Okay.
He has told us the possibilities through the fly path of international fly paths of wild birds and so on. Fine. Those ones are beyond the control of the farmer. But we are concerned with those that are within the control of the farmer.
All right.
That must be reinforced. Egg trays have been a major concern. It should be one way now. As of today, egg trays should be disposable egg trays.
All right. So
from the farm, should just go out and should never enter that farm again.
So it's possible that from the egg trays you can still get.
It's a possibility. People talk about disinfection and whatever it is. How many farmers are highly knowledgeable about disinfectants?
That is the point. So how have
many?
you?
Phenol will not kill a virus.
All right. Okay. We'll come to that. Let's. Jeffrey is calling back from Benin. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, I think fundamentally there's a question that has been asked repeatedly, which has to do with how come you don't have a lot of veterinarians in Nigeria. For one thing I know for sure, you have a lot of universities in Nigeria who are offering courses in veterinary medicine, and on a yearly basis they are churning out graduates. But today, how many of them are gainful employed? I know there is a law in this country that each local government should have a veterinarian. How many local governments in their employment have a veterinarian? Now, because as a nation, for you to combat disease, you must have your contingency, plan on ground that is proactive to deal with situations like this. And I want to align myself with my national president that it is totally unacceptable with the level of competence we have attained in this country for us to be confronted with this situation. There is about 700 million or more that has been expended in compensation. If 10% of that money was made available for active surveillance, I can assure you we should release funds so that this can be combated within the shortest possible time. And thank you for this good program, and God bless Nigeria. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Jeffrey. Right, we're returning to the issue. How much awareness do we have out there? And the point has been repeatedly made that, yes, you have a code, you have been working on research, and you know safe practice, but how much of this information is out there to those who are concerned? And
I don't think it's a question of information alone. I mean, government impounds smuggled or unsafe poultry and buries them in Port Harcourt, and you go and dig it. Is it because you don't know that it is not safe?
So what's responsible for that kind of a behavior?
It's poverty, absolute poverty, and poverty of ideas. I agree that there is some level of ignorance, but there is a level of poverty that makes someone to go and dig a dead bird that has been said to be unsafe. And maybe I'll also use this opportunity to talk about the inadequacy of veterinary staff and so on and so forth, and the lack of employment. There are 10 universities now running veterinary degrees in our universities. In some states like Jigawa, Yobe, Borno, they actually give automatic employment to indigents of the state. If you are a veterinary graduate, you don't need to apply. Immediately you finish, you get employed. But there are places where it's not there. At the moment, the federal government does not have a single veterinary clinic or veterinary hospital anywhere in the country, except the teaching hospitals in the universities. That means, as we speak, there is no veterinary clinic anywhere owned by the federal government, and where states don't employ. And there I gave examples. Rivers has only 2. The states have not employed. The federal government doesn't have a veterinary clinic there. How can you have veterinary staff there to do the work? We are talking about meat safety. If you don't have veterinary staff to inspect abattoirs and slaughter slabs, the situation they are in is another subject for another day, the deplorable nature of the abattoirs. But the fact that you don't have the veterinary staff to inspect and ensure that animals slaughtered for human consumption are safe is another problem, because you don't have the numbers. You don't have the... Even in the private sector, because ordinarily, every farmer who invests heavily in poultry business should also employ the requisite staff to ensure that birds are healthy. But again, these are not there. The same with laws and regulations. There should be, and there is actually, laws stating that if you have up to 250 birds, you must register with the Director of Veterinary Services. But it's observed largely in the breach, and there are no mechanisms to enforce. With the current situation of outbreaks, there are needs to ensure that there are movement restrictions, especially from infected states, that you don't just sell birds to other places. The personnel to ensure that these regulations are enforced are not there. So clearly, there are no mechanisms to enforce those regulations. The numbers and the personnel are also not there. The facilities are inadequate.
Cyril, I just want to bring us to... I was faced with a situation from being in the central diagnostic laboratory that actually issues out results. And the whole idea of find it very early so we make our diagnosis and send the result directly to the field is so you can take the action that is necessary to hold the virus in a given location where it's been confirmed. But I hate to say these, and I was very disappointed, and I didn't know these until I sent a result to Rivers State. The farmer called me and said to me that he was asked by the state. Like I said, I hate to say this, but that's the reality of the situation we found ourselves in. Called me on phone and said, well, they've gotten the result, and we say, find it quickly so we've made our diagnosis. You need to take an action. You need to get to the farm, call the birds, by whatever means, disinfect the place, make sure everything is done. And he said to me that the state said he should do it. And I said, you're not trained to do that. That's a part of control measure. You're not trained. There's a risk you do it, you not do it well, the risk you could get infected. And he said to me, there are only 2 vets in the state. And the state said, you should do that job, which you are not trained to do. He said, okay, I have depopulated the birds. That means I have eliminated them. Now please come and carry out the next step, the process of cleaning the place, disinfecting it, decontaminating it. And he said, well, please provide the money for the guys to fill the tanks with fuel, or get the people who are going to come and do that, buy disinfectant. And I said, so where is government? Because that's a specialized business, part of control. So if you are not ready to do that, then you're not ready to control the disease. Government has a responsibility, federal and states. So if you're not willing to do that, we are not yet ready to control the disease. And I say this, the danger is that we end up with an endemicity. That means that the virus is resident. And you know the nice thing about this virus? It's so wonderful. It has the ability to change its form.
So
and the risk is there, it mutates. It has the ability. It does that. And what we are afraid of, and what the world is afraid of, if it gains the requisite genetic makeup for a sustained human-to-human transmission, then we're done. That means that you get infected. So now we're saying it's the disease of poultry. So if you hold the disease in poultry, humans don't get infected. But now the virus acquires the ability, and it's a unique virus, the ability to move from a human that is infected to another human. Then it's no longer going to be poultry. Because all it needs to do is that we're in here in the studio and you sneeze, and of course you have it, and we all get infected, and when I go back, or everybody here gets infected, and you go back, and every member of our families get infected. And then the fear of a pandemic. So hold it down in poultry, and then we don't have the business like...
that will be affected. And another point is that there's no law that supports farming. If anything happens to my birds and I go to government and they refuse to help me, what right do I have to charge them for that? There is no right. Government, support to farming is too low. We need to know this. And another thing is that we need to, this is the angle, this problem we are facing now in terms of poultry is a way of creating employment for our youth. There are a lot of youth out there that we can put them at work. What are the costs of these things? How can we do this? Because wherever there is youth, there is innovation, there is competition. We have the skills. I run a cooperative in agriculture. I know it's strictly for youth. I know what they can do. So please and please, I think we need to look inward and see how we should stop planning. Let us take action that can take us to the next level in agriculture. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Tulu. Yes.
Yes, I was going to comment about this issue, the challenge of adequate equipment, infrastructure, and so on being faced by agencies. I think it cuts across board. And I think we may, looking at the challenges or the limitations of government at this time, we may need to appeal to the private sector, maybe under corporate social responsibility, to come in, because all of us are vulnerable. We are in this country. We are living here. And if nobody can say he is completely safe if anything happens. Even if you stay within the confines of your home, you have domestic servants, staff that go out and then you could constitute a risk to you. Maybe we need to now appeal to, throw the appeal open that, look, we are all here in Nigeria. What support can you give to government or to the industry, particularly the poultry farmers? What support can go to them from your organization out of your profits? So I think because every agency has challenges, manpower. Well, as animal scientists, I think maybe we are better than veterinarians in terms of manpower at local level, at the state, and I'm not sure of the federal level, but at least of states, But I'm going to say, if there's a state like you are mentioning, Rivers, where there are only 2 veterinarians, okay, fine. Why would the animal scientists there not be used along with the 2 veterinarians? So I would suggest that, yes, because we must work together, that if you don't have, if under the leadership of those 2 veterinarians, something can still be done. I'm not saying that the manpower should not be built. No, that is still critical. It must be done. Okay. But in the interim of what we face now, I think the animal scientists in that state should rise up to the occasion, move with the vets, stay together, and stop that virus from moving out of Rivers.
Okay, Dr. Did you are suggesting a collaboration with the private sector, because this is what would ask you for Duto, and we'll also ask Dr. Eze. It's been said that you would require at least $20 million to inject into the system in order to take care of this. Is that a fair amount? And it's seen that likely to get out $20 million just like that, especially now. What's your response to what Dr. Oyediji has just suggested about involving the private sector?
Yes, I wouldn't say that we won't be able to get the 20 million because...
okay.
I won't say
all
that
right.
we won't be able to get because...
Okay, we'll go ahead. We'll go back to Chief Oduto when you're done with that.
Yeah. Because the ministry is discussing with Ministry of Finance how to raise money to, tackle this avian influenza.
All right, so we'll put the same question to Chief Oduto in Lagos.
The private sector is actually actively getting involved. I'll give you an example. I am aware of some companies that are currently working with the universities on certain research that applies to the private sector. There is a lot of research in the universities, but most of them don't have commercial value.
Yes, okay, and it's also been suggested.
A lot of companies in this industry, for instance, that have donated disinfectant and all sorts of equipment.
Okay. Oh dear. Okay, looks like we're losing the audio from the Lagos Center with Chief Oduto. But if you can hear me, there are suggestions that there should be stricter controls in registering poultry farmers. What do you say to that? You are the top of the Poultry Association.
I agree totally. I think in those days when I started my career in this industry, 25 years ago, which is much less than some of the distinguished panelists, if you had 10,000 birds, you were a big, big, big farmer. Right now, for you to be described as a big, big farmer, you need to have 100,000 birds. So things have changed. Also, we did not have issues like avian influenza. The scale of the business is changing. So I think it's important that legislation should be put in place. For you to set up a farm, you need to abide by certain, the 1,000 plus entry points they say we have in this country. What that means is that people are exposed to all sorts of hazards from consuming these unwholesome poultry products. But that's not my point here. My point is that on average, a family of 4, and this is statistical, and it can be argued here or there, but a family of 4 produces approximately 4 tons of corn because they farm on 2 hectares of land. That means that we need 500,000 farmers to produce the 2 million or so tons of corn that we consume in this country. Now, if we are producing 100% of our chicken here, and we're talking only chicken meat now, that is 4 times that number that theoretically could be producing food for this country. And it would immediately cause a bubble up economy. That is, the grassroots will become empowered because they will get a fair income for their harvest. So the government, for instance, needs to increase production of corn from 2 tons per hectare, because that farmer's colleague elsewhere is getting 8 tons per hectare, 12 tons per hectare. If right now he's getting 2 tons per hectare at 60,000 naira, that's 120,000 income. If he's getting 8 tons per hectare on the same piece of land, it goes up to 480,000 naira. So there are several issues here that I think we need to address.
Yes.
And we can address them simultaneously.
Yes, because big-time losses. You're talking the economy now, especially now, that what you largely depended on in the past is no longer there, it's missing. But let's go to Lokoja and take this call from Jonah, and then we'll come back and examine the economic aspects of in terms of the huge losses that the country would incur going by this ravaging avian influenza. Lokoja, Jonah, calling in from Lokoja. Go ahead, Jonah.
My contribution is this. Good evening, sir. My contribution is that we are talking about the poultry and agricultural products now. There's lots of other sphere of life. Nigerian government, they are trying a lot. The only problem I'm seeing is that so many plans, so many skills. I'm even sorry for you, the presenter, because they will be making you to be speaking about so many issues concerning Nigeria, but there's no action. And even when the action takes place, it only ends up in the hands of the rich men. It will never get to the grassroots. If there is any implementation that government wants to do, they should channel it so that it will go to the grassroots. That's the only way Nigeria can develop. Because when we are talking about association here and there, it's only few people that will have benefit of it. So you people should help the youth or the young ones. Or even what about the women in the street? How can you get in touch with them? So please, if there is anything to be done, let everything be channeled down to the grassroots. Thank you. That's my comment. Good night.
Right. Thank you very much, Jonah. Well, we shouldn't be despondent, should we?
No, we shouldn't.
All right.
Yeah, but I think it is important to situate the implications of the continued and the persistence of this disease. It has implications for our economy. I think we cannot say it enough.
Right.
It has implications for our lives because it employs a lot of people. It has implications for international trade. Just last year, the United States of America and South Africa got into a trade dispute because of this disease. Because the South African government wanted to ban importation of poultry products from the U.S., and it led to that. So it's a very serious disease that it could affect international trade itself. then we've said that it has implications for public health as well. And so it's a disease for which concern for it should truly be raised to the level we are now discussing Lassa fever. So it's a very important thing that we should raise sufficient hue and cry about it, because it is about time we put a stop to it.
You all right?
Yeah, Cyril, I was just going to say, like I said earlier on, this government, I'm so glad that part of what I have a passion. First, we are all stakeholders in this industry. If the poultry industry goes down, those of us who are sitting on this side are totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter what professional group we belong to. We are stakeholders in this industry. And a number of us here are poultry farmers, right? So we're stakeholders. And I said, it's about poverty alleviation. This government is passionate about alleviating poverty. Government has got to see that, look, there are so many persons who have lost their jobs and their means of livelihood on account of avian influenza. It's an employer of labor. Nigeria is one of the largest, in fact, I see it as the largest supplier of day-old chicks in the sub-region. We export day-old chicks. I'm sure I'm sure that's right. We have a very vibrant, industry, breeder industry that exports birds. Nobody is going to take these birds from us. And we're talking about raising, now, beyond oil, we want to be able to use some of the things that God has endowed us with to earn foreign exchange. Nobody is going to take day-old chicks from us if they know that as a country we are infected around the place. So export is really involved in this business. So I think government, for me, I don't know, there's a role government really needs to play in this place, just like other stakeholders in the industry have a responsibility around this. So I will have
avian influenza. So, and we believe that every stakeholder doing, even NAFDAC and the Consumer Protection Council, every stakeholder doing his own or her own part will make sure that all this illegal importation of poultry and poultry products will stop. Even not only that, we also notice that the government policy of no vaccination, some people are illegally importing vaccines into Nigeria. So the problem is hydra-headed, but it will not overwhelm the government.
Yes, Dr.
Yes, I'd like to comment about the economic impact of this disease on the feed sector. Alltech Global Feed Survey 2015 ranked Nigeria as number 51 out of 130 countries leading in the feed sector in the world. And the figure that was used was 2.3 million metric tons of feed, which was calculated between 2012 and 2013. In fact, 2013 actual figure was 3.3 million metric tons. 2015 estimate was 5.5 million metric tons of feed, which means Nigeria should have moved by now from number 51 possibly to maybe number 40, thereabout. The impact is that Nigeria is set to enter in the export of animal feeds. We can enter Europe. And the reason why the institute, our institute, brought in the international, in fact, that was why they developed interest. Looking at Nigeria, we are ahead of too many countries in the world. They looked at that. This is a major feed milling country. And they came in to conduct the training that will now align Nigeria's feed sector with the world. So we are set to enter the world animal feed export market. This disease should not stop us. We should stop this disease. Now, from the analysis that we made, which submitted to the Federation, Nigeria has 650 on our records small-scale feed millers. It's a major source of employment. And in fact, it's a peculiar, we have a peculiar situation. The Federation never knew about this type of setup in this country. They came here. When they saw those figures, they would not believe that. Can the country have 650 feed millers? But it's even more than that. It's over 1,000. But those between 1 to 2 metric tons per hour, were 650, milling in pockets in different places. And we've mastered the engineering. All those feed mills are manufactured in Ibadan. The reason why I say Ibadan, 70% of commercial poultry activities in this country are in the southwest. And the president of the Veterinary Medical Association mentioned the issue of going from that Ibadan. A lot goes to too many parts of this country. So we need a strategy. The disease will threaten the fish sector. If the poultry population goes down, the demand for animal feeds will also go down. I mean, it's natural because the feeds are produced for the chickens. So we are looking at something up to 500 billion naira being threatened in this country per annum.
Right. And again, the demand for poultry meat would go down. Of course, right now there are quite a number of people who wouldn't touch chicken with a 20-foot pool.
No, we are not. No. That is not the people are eating chickens.
Recently, I had the Minister of Agriculture talking about a liter or a pint of milk a day for our school children. It's good for their health. Imagine saying an egg a day for 30 million children. That alone will stimulate a lot of economic growth because it will create a lot of jobs. It will make our children healthier. They will be the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. But as long as they feed on only grain-based foods, they don't stand a chance.
Fine. So I know that initially you talked about handling and all that. That's not just the consumption. But I suppose what millions of Nigerians would want to know at this point in time is
it safe?
Is it safe to consume chicken when you have an outbreak of bird flu?
Because the virus is fragile, it doesn't withstand cooking temperature. It's truly a fragile virus that doesn't withstand cooking temperature. But I must emphasize this, that it doesn't come out of the farm cooked.
Okay, but in handling chicken, what is the best way, the best practice in handling chicken for food purposes?
First of all, ensure that what you consume, if you are a poultry farmer, any sign of ill health, whether it is for consumption or not, report it quickly.
Right.
So whether it is healthy or not, it should be reported early enough. But by and large, basic hygiene, washing hands both before and after handling poultry, whether you are slaughtering, you are processing, you are packaging, ensure that if it's possible, wear protective clothing. But after that too, wash your hands clean. And you should be free because it's also susceptible to common disinfectants and detergents.
Okay, Dr. Juarez.
Yeah, the future of animal poultry production all over the world is still poultry. I tell people that's you get out of this country today, and the cheapest source of animal protein, honestly, is poultry. And over the Christmas period, I was really sad. I love spent hens because as an African, if you you don't have access to local chickens, the next best bet is to look for a chicken whose meat is a little on the tough side. So I don't do broiler, I do local chicken. And I was really very upset that around Plateau, it was difficult for me to get spent hens. Why? Because most of the adult birds had been depopulated earlier on around the place. And I said to myself, I'm losing this very precious meat that I'm concerned. But you said about strategy. I think the strategy, because what we're concerned now is how do we contain this disease? How do we control this disease and restore the industry to where you and I don't have to bother whether, because there's no avian influenza, so you're not thinking about all these, Dr. Edgar's, I have to wash my hands. It's necessary because hygiene is good. But you know, I can relax a little more and eat just about any chicken that comes my way. So we're looking at the strategy. And I said, look, there are two things that are involved with avian influenza. The risk of introduction and the risk of spread. And it's about when you want to control it, you want to, on the basis of analysis, what are the highest chances that this virus will enter? Look at it, we're looking at factors we're going to use to mitigate the introduction. Then we look at the factors we're going to use to mitigate its spread so that we can stop this disease. And Cyril and I will meet somewhere out there and we're taking roasted chicken, no fear.
Juru Eze, Chief Veterinary Officer, Director, Department of Veterinary and Pest Control Services, Federal Ministry of Agriculture. We thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Godwin Oyedele Oyediji, Registrar CEO, Nigerian Institute of Animal Science. We thank you so much. Thank you.
Please continue to eat chicken and eggs.
All right.
I have had mine at dinner, and I'll have it this morning again.
Okay. All right. Fine. And then Dr. Tony Joannis, Head Regional Laboratory for Avian Influenza and Other Transboundary Animal Diseases of the National Veterinary Research Institute, VOM, NVRI. Thank you so much for being here.
Sorry, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad you provided a forum for people to be educated on this on this disease.
Right, thank you. And Dr. Edgar Amos Sunday, National President, Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association, we also thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Right. So to all of you out there, thanks for being part of this program. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. And just a parting shot, just like Dr. Oyediji said, you can actually have your chicken and your eggs. And, well, we'll talk about that some other time. But thanks, thanks for being part of this. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.
And American.
So my signature tune is pretty much
Robbers, they rob, they no see you, brother.
And like he said, I'm robbers, rob, they no see you. They no see me, my brother. It happened to me.
Many, many months and many years and come and go.
Baba God, we say thank you.
the music is the way that the whole world can connect.
Sometimes music goes with comedy. I love music.
Let the love for music keep burning in you.
Music and art, a must watch.
We will be using words to describe fear.
Fear not yourself for the anticipation of fear.
Enslaved to sin, in need of a word of salvation that brings eternal revelation and restores identity and reputation that I'm...
Good afternoon. Welcome to the program, Path to Pinnacle. I am Jamila Benzis Buyengon. Today on the program, we are loaded. The program has a bumper package. But before we continue, let's inspire you. Innocence, take it from here.
Clarity.
Possibilities.
Change.
I had this interesting conversation with my 8-year-old son. And, he took me to this program he was watching on television and decided to educate me about the program. Initially, I was a bit hesitant and cynical about it all. But eventually, when I settled down and got down to it and followed him to the bedroom, I noticed that he had a very valid point. As I talk to you about learning today, I'd like to say to you that every opportunity can be a learning experience for you if you are open. A wise man once said that our minds are like parachutes. They only work when they are open. I want to challenge you to be like one of these people who say to themselves that I am open. I'm open to learning. I'm open to increase.